I'm here at the prestigious St. George Golf and Country Club. I'm here with the Chief Operating Officer. Thank you so much for your time there, Jason.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're talking 1929 that this golf course was designed. You share a little bit about the history if you can?
So the club started with a Toronto businessman by the name of Holmes Smith, who had 3,000 acres of land in this area. Now at the time, in 1928, the Royal York Hotel was being built by CPR. And in 1928, that was the largest hotel in the British Empire. They needed a golf course. So we're about 12 miles away from the Royal York Hotel. Holmes Smith had the land. He was able to broker the deal with the hotel, and they built this golf course. Holmes Smith went to Stanley Thompson and said, take the best piece of land that you can find of these 3,000 acres and build us a golf course. The course opened in 1929. And it opened as a public course. In 1934, the course became private. And in 1946, Holmes Smith bought back the golf course and named it St. George's. It was originally called the Royal York Hotel Golf Club, and it was shortened later on to the Royal York Golf Club. So Holmes Smith bought it back in 1946, and then the members bought the club from Holmes Smith and made it their own in 1962. So that's a little bit about the history. Now, one interesting piece, when Holmes Smith passed away in 1934, a friend of his, Godfrey Pettit, took over his company. And Godfrey Pettit was a veteran from the First World War and was an amputee. He had lost his arm and never played golf. But if you think, if the Invictus Games were around back in 1935, perhaps he would have taken up the sport.
So we could actually trace, you could actually say that Invictus Games has its roots, tied in with this golf club. Also, what I've noticed is that you've done 10 major different golfing events that have been held here.
Yes, we've been very fortunate. We've hosted the Women's Open 5 times, and we've hosted the Canadian Open for men 5 times as well, most recently in 2010. The club has a long history of accolades, being recognized as one of the best golf courses in Canada, and we consistently make the top 100 in the 30 to 40, top 30 or 40 golf courses in the world range. So we're quite proud of that, and we have a really special property here.
Before we get to Invictus Games, you were mentioning that you've had relatives that, long since passed on, but they actually served in the military. You share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I grew up in Cape Breton. My great-grandmother had 4 children. My great-uncles George, my grandmother Nora, Lewis, and Angus. And during childbirth, Angus being the youngest, my great-grandmother had passed away. So we had family, extended family in the U.S., in the New York area, who agreed to take Angus in as their own. Oh, and I missed one, Shelley, my great-uncle Shelley. So they agreed to take Angus in as their own, and which was great for Angus, but the brothers and sister, my grandmother, didn't get to know Angus and never met him or really knew him until the Second World War. The 3 brothers, Lewis, Shelley, and George, all served for Canada, and Angus, their brother, coincidentally, served for the U.S. So in the middle of this war in France, the 4 brothers had met for the first time. They had an opportunity to meet. 3 serving Canada, one serving the U.S. So it's an interesting story in how it brought the family back together. The war progressed. My great uncle Shelley was unfortunately shot in the head by a sniper. He did survive. He came back to Cape Breton. He had a steel plate in his head. He had to learn how to walk, talk, read, write, which he did. He persevered. Lewis died he came home safely, but died at age 38 due to heart complications. My great uncle Angus, who returned to the U.S., lived a very vibrant life until his 70s. My great uncle George was in a military vehicle accident during his service, and really was never the same after that. When he came home, returned to Cape Breton, he had something called shell shock, which is now, of course, PTSD. And he had a lifelong battle with alcoholism. He never talked about his service. He internalized it. So it's nice to see organizations like the Invictus Games and True Patriot Love, who provide these wonderful services and support groups for our veterans. If these services were available back then, it would be interesting to see if life would have been different for some people in my family. So.
Well, actually, even back, I got out in '95, and there really wasn't anything available for the veterans. And at that time, the term PTSD was kind of shunned in that. As we look at the Invictus Games right now, what I'd like you to do is share, what does Invictus say to you?
Well, Invictus is about supporting those who supported us. I think, I was attending the opening ceremonies, and I don't know who said it, but they really did. They said it best, in my opinion. And the line was, it was their job to support us, and now it's our job to support them. That's what Invictus really is for me.
I want to thank you so much, Jason, for giving us your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.